with the announcement of the Kiss, the New Era avatars on December 2nd at the final show at Madison Square Garden, the band seemed to embrace the future here.
Did they announce something?
Well, I think the whole internet is buzzing.
I was going to say the internet's been very quiet. Did something change in the world of Kiss?
I think they almost broke the internet within the last probably week or so. Not only that, you also teach music, songwriting, and you've written for Guitar Player magazine as well.
I have. Yes, I've had a long and checkered life, Robert.
You have a lot going on, and you've brought us some great music. It's been amazing, and I dare say, the magic power of the three of you guys back in the day with your shows is very missed in this day and age, I have to say. And for our younger audience out there who may not be aware, Tribe was nominated for multi-Juno Awards, including Group of the Year for 79, 85, 86, and 87. Just some amazing stuff going on with you guys. So, of course, I have to ask you the same question that every interviewer is asking you, that's on everyone's mind and all the Triumph fans' mind worldwide. Will we see Triumph perform again?
I doubt it. I'm sorry to, take out a sharp little pin and prick the balloon of hope, but I think when we did the Triumph documentary and we Gil rehearsed for a long time to sort of get him some. We only played 3 songs, but he was going to sing and play Lights Go Down, and he hadn't played in ever since we did the Sweden reunion. He hadn't sat down and played any music, touched his drums. So, and then when we did that, after the end of it, I think he went, "Okay, I'm done." Like a show of hands. Like
you're a busy guy, man, and you've lived the rock dream, man. Being influenced by Van Halen, Kiss, and then becoming friends with Edward Van Halen and co-producing Ace's new album, 10,000 Volts. Did you ever think Jersey guy and you're running the gambit here, man?
It's funny. PJ and I talk about this all the time, and it's a sense to where, look, this was all part of the plan, but I always have to go back to that 8-year-old kid, 1978, in my room in Paramus, New Jersey, when I had Kiss posters and Van Halen posters. I don't even think I had posters at that time. I had Kiss Rock and Roll Over, and I had Van Halen 1, an 8-track, and Kiss Rock and Roll Over. Let me show you this. This will be really cool. So this is the record, and this is the record that completely changed my life forever. And Ace was so nice to sign it for me, and he wrote on it, "Your first kiss." But it never gets lost on me. So yeah, the 8-year-old kid in me, no matter what, dude, I'm still such a fan of this, as you can tell by my studio, which is filled with all great memorabilia and my life experiences in this incredible rock and roll fantasy that I've been blessed with. But yeah, it never gets lost on me. The 8-year-old kid in me would never believe that all these years later, here I am with, I had an incredible relationship with the Van Halen brothers. I'm still friends with Alex, but with Ed, that saying, be careful when you meet your heroes because they're probably going to let you down. Well, both these guys, Ed Van Halen and Ace Frehley, they never let me down. You know what I mean? So it never gets lost on me. But you know what, dude? This was all part of the plan. I didn't get into rock and roll to just do what I did with Trickster back in the 80s and 90s. This was going to be for all my life. I'm a musician, I'm an artist, and this is what I love. It's in my blood, man. I just got back from the road with Trickster Acoustic this weekend, and literally I woke up and ran down to my studio and started working again.
So in 2022, you joined Foghat after working with them on a side project. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I've been around the Foghat camp since about 2014. Roger and I had been writing songs together and just getting along great. We've been friends since we met. And I was actually down in Florida at their studio getting ready to work on Sonic Mojo, which didn't have a name at that point or really a song list. We were just writing some songs. And Charlie decided to retire. Their former lead singer decided to retire. And I was already there and already writing, and they said, well, do you want to join the band? And I said, absolutely. So we pivoted from working on the record to learning the set. So because we had gigs coming up in a couple of weeks.
And with the string of sold out shows you guys have been putting on, just amazing stuff happening. I know I was reading in the social media, Eric's working through some issues and stuff, and she got the singer from Whitesnake backing him up a little bit, helping out with your shows and that. How's that been going? How is Eric doing?
Great. Just you know, it's tough when you get. I mean, that's kind of why it's a farewell tour. I mean, we could limp over the finish line or run over the finish line. And right now we're planning to run over the finish line, but it's tough. Vocals are tough. You know, it's I got a tight, tough schedule. So this gentleman plays in as we just were talking, one of the Italian Mr. Big copy band or tribute bands. He's got a great voice, a wonderful guy. So just comes in. You know, as you get older, you just can't. Not all singers can hit those high notes anymore. So we
Right.
And that's not every song or everything like that. But you know, a little help from my friends comes in on the lead vocals. I still do my part as I do. Paul, and our drummer Nick is a great singer. Really, just a really excellent singer. He one great thing about Pat Torpey, God rest his soul, was that you know he was a lead singer also and at a really high range.
Right.
So we were worried we could never find somebody like that, but we found Nick, and he's on top of being an amazing drummer. He does Pat's parts perfectly, and they're quite difficult. There's a lot of nuance and finesse things you need to know.
So I met Edward in '77. We had a friendship relationship that lasted until 2003. For the next 17 years, let me backtrack just a little bit. So in 1986, so I had been hanging out with Edward about 8 or 9 years at that point. I approached him and said, Ed, I would like to write your authorized biography. Other writers are going to come to you asking you that same question. I'd like to be the person to do that. And he said, yes, you know, of course it would be you. Who else would it be? So I started working on what was going to be his authorized biography. But Edward was always working on something new musically. And he would say to me, well, now's not the right time. If we do it now, that means the next record I do won't be part of it, you know, which I understood. I mean, I was disappointed, of course, but I understood that. So fast forward to 2003, the authorized biography obviously never gets written. For the next 17 years, I continue with my music journalism career, and I'm interviewing people. In the back of my mind, there was that book that almost was. So in 2020, I don't know what it was, man. A couple of people said, hey, man, you should write the book. And I really didn't want to do it at that point. I thought too much time had passed. I don't remember what had happened, you know, just various reasons. But something pushed me into just to go through and look at my interview cassettes, as you mentioned. Everything was on cassette. And I see this one binder, it's all in black. The spine is broken. I mean, it was weird, man. It was all dusty. I mean, it had literally probably not been opened since the day some of those conversations were recorded. I looked through them. I pulled one out, which was cryptically marked relationship or something. I put it in, and I hear Edward's voice, and he's talking about his father, and I can tell how emotional he is. And I go, oh my God, this is amazing. I'd sort of forgotten about those conversations that weren't specifically interviews that I was, you know, officially doing with him for a magazine. These were just conversations we had. And yes, that was the trigger, man, what I call the twilight tapes, because those conversations typically happened at like 3 a.m. He'd call me, he wanted to talk, and that was the trigger. So I sort of slowly kind of, you know, put myself back into the mindset. Okay, let me see if I can revisit the book and see what I have in me, you know. So
a total microcosm of my entire career and who I am now and where I came from.
Yeah, it just sounds excellent from what I've heard from it so far, man. You definitely put a lot of lot of nice touches in this from what I'm hearing. Tell us about putting together some of the tracks a little bit. Was it stuff you had, or was it all just kind of brand new put together?
No, this is all new music. That's what people, I want to make sure we emphasize that. This is not rehashed, retreads, unreleased tracks from the archives. This is all new music from all those projects. So you've got a brand new Steelers song for the first time in 42 years. Brand new Keel song. New music from my band, Ron Keel Band, a new song from Iron Horse, new country music from Ronnie Lee Keel, and maybe a surprise visit to my short but memorable tenure in Black Sabbath.
I'm really digging what you put together. Very, very raw, you know, especially the Sideways song. That was one of the first ones I listened to. And I'm like, this guy is back in full swing. There's no doubt about it at all. You know, because a couple years back, you had some issues going on. You know, in 2019, you had that emergency gallbladder surgery. You know, you missed out on the tour. You know, that had to stir a lot of emotions, and I'm sure concerns with the previous members of your previous band, right? I mean, that was probably a very difficult time.
Yeah, it was horrible, but a lot of our body, in most cases, our body is just listening to our brain. And you know, I was experiencing a tremendous amount of stress at that phase of that situation.
Right.
And it caught up to me because I had asked, what makes something like this happen? You know, I'm like super healthy, take care of myself, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, all the analysts and the doctors are like, well, stress can be a big component, you know. I'm like, well, that makes sense, you know.
Right.
And it kind of freaked me out too, because I realized that you can die in a hotel room in the middle of nowhere, and that's how it ends.
Right. You always hear those stories from bands, you know, back in the day. You know, they didn't hear from somebody for a couple of days, you know, oh, get the manager to go call them, and you know, they're gone, right?
Right. And you know, it's not like I didn't feel like I was surrounded by anyone who cared about me. I was just sort of like, go see if he can play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I'm like, I got to go to the hospital. And then everyone left, you know, so it's fine. But
yeah.
Right after that, we were supposed to go to Europe and start all up again. And I'm just like,
not feeling it. Yeah.
Well, I'm not dying this way, you know, and that I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but it kind of, I saw what it was. And like, there's quality of life is everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Really.
Because I had heard that name because the person, I'm not going to say names, but it was a person who worked for Sharon Osbourne Management. And I happened to know that person, not personally, but I knew the name because I had played with Arch Enemy on Ozfest in 2005.
Right.
So I knew that person. He was in the production team. And when he reached out, I knew who it was, you know, so I knew the email was legit.
Right.
So yeah, but I was just mistaken. Originally, I thought they might be interested in like maybe having Firewind on, you know, Ozfest second stage or something like that.
Right. You didn't know he was looking for a new Axeman, right? Artificial Mind you put together, and you're working on that with who you working on with Brian Wheat from Tesla in the studio, which I was reading,
Yep.
and that's amazing. And also very cool was you got Jeff Keith on there singing a couple songs for you too. How did that get put together? Was that something that was kind of planned, or was just like, hey, give him a call, see what's up?
Yeah, I mean, so all of this was pretty much solidified before COVID. And you know, we had Bad Marriage had been touring a lot with Tesla, and you know, they were a very, very, very awesome camp as well. And you know, we became close with them, and Jeff took a liking to us. He started coming out on stage and singing with us. We used to do you know, some old Aerosmith songs, and he would jump out there and on stage, and you know, and it would really help us because the crowd would get into it. And so long story short, me and Brian developed a working relationship with studio stuff, and we agreed that he should take the helm and do our new EP, which at the time was was the Artificial Mind EP. And I had asked Jeff somewhere along the road if he would ever, consider singing on a track of ours. And he agreed. And again, it wasn't, till a year later that we actually got into the studio, which was right when COVID hit. Everything kind of shut down, but we flew to Sacramento and kind of isolated ourselves in Brian's studio in Sacramento. And we were just chugging along, getting all of our ideas down in the studio. And as it started to come together, Brian was he just said, I'm going to call Jeff and see if he's free for the next couple days and have him come down and sing on some tracks. And we were hopeful, and he got him on the phone, and he said, yeah, I'll be down in a few hours. So that's just how it happened. He stayed in the studio a couple days with us, and it was amazing.
And I was reading a little bit in your history way back when, so if you want to go back a little bit, you auditioned back in the day, I guess, for Quiet Riot when Kevin left the band. They were trying to figure out what to do, and so you kind of threw your hat in the ring for that.
Well, I threw my tape in the ring. I never got a chance. I never really got a chance to do anything else. And it was a funny thing because the house I brought it to happened to be Chuck Wright's house. And at that time, he didn't know me. I didn't know him. And so he said, well, just leave the tape at the door. And then 6 months later has passed. They'd already found their Paul Shortino at that time, even before I sent the tape. But I didn't know that. I was just a new guy from New Haven, trying to get myself anywhere I could out in LA. I spent my time out there working with a band called LA Rocks. And about a year later, maybe less, they hired Chuck to do bass for a showcase we were doing with LA Rocks. And when we started rehearsing, he goes, I know that voice. I've heard this voice before. And I said, well, it could be that I sent you a tape like maybe 8 months ago. And I never even got to meet you. You just said, leave it at the door. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, I've been trying to reach you in Connecticut. And I said, well, I moved from Connecticut. I now live in LA. Probably why we didn't hook up. So that was the beginning of the beginning. After that, he asked me to lunch. And when we went out to lunch, he mentioned to me his band, House of Lords. Yes, House of Lords, but it wasn't called House of Lords then. It was just a project with Greg Giuffria, Lenny Cordola, Ken Mary, Chuck Wright, and no singer at that point. And they were looking for the singer. So it was a process. And that process ended up with me getting the gig, which made me a very, very happy guy.
Yeah. Well, now what I was reading, I also read after a meeting with Gene Simmons, you were the one they definitely wanted to be a singer with that for House of Lords. Definitely. Yes. It was his suggestion, I think, to do that, right?
Yes, it was. It was his final decision. I mean, I had already met up with Greg Giuffria, went to his house, and we did a couple of songs together, Standing on the Edge, Living on the Edge. I can't remember the title. It was one of the songs that's on the first album. Got a lot of albums, and I can't remember titles. And Jealous Heart. And I did 2 songs with him, and he said, I'm convinced you definitely got the chops to do this. And then the next was Gene Simmons. And basically with Gene, it was more of a character interview than it was a vocal interview. And by that, I mean, how I presented myself, my views on everything, to make sure I was a good fit and not somebody just coming in there with this huge ego that's going to think he's taking over the band.
And if you get up every single day and you try to say, okay, today I'm going to try to live right, I'm going to treat my neighbors the way I want to be treated, you're going to mess up because you're human. I mess up all the time, but I think it's a fantastic way to live. And in the rock community, I personally think that the rock community does a really good job of this because, I play rock. I mean, that's all I do all year long. I play rock shows and I see fans and I see people that come that are Democrats and Republicans and independents and religious people and non-religious people. And they all come together for rock concerts. Right. Everybody treats each other good. We never have fist fights at our rock concerts.
Because that's the power of great music, right? Is to band people together, right?
That's what it seems like to me. People come and they look out for each other. And so I actually mean this. I kind of feel like maybe all the people in Washington, D.C. should take a few days off come out to see what rock concerts are like and find out how Americans actually do treat each other, and then set some new standards.
And
It's
you've
something I would've wrote when I was
written and
14.
collaborated with some amazing, songwriters and producers.
Mhm.
Jack Ponte, Alice Cooper,
Yeah.
Bon Jovi,
Mhm.
Tom Weirman, Motley Crue, Cheap Trick, Taylor
Yep.
Rhodes, Aerosmith, Gene Black, and
Yeah.
Michael Anthony from Van Halen. Can you tell us a little bit about how that project went with Michael?
Yeah. Well, you've done your research. That's pretty good. So Michael got involved in a band called Moonshine that I was in, and it just got off the ground. They were auditioning singers, and the band really didn't have a name or anything like that, or that big of a direction going anywhere. But they had Michael Anthony that thought they were really good just as a band, and they were looking for a singer. So I auditioned and I got the part, and we quickly started writing. We just started writing like crazy. Within about 3 months, we had whole albums with the album of materials. Sorry, and then and Michael was co-managing us, and put us in the studio at Eddie Van Halen's 5150 Studios, and we probably recorded about half the record there and half the record at the Grinder and a couple other places down in LA. And
Now, this had to be a while back then, if it was at the 5150 studio, right? This had to be a while back, right?
Oh, yeah, it was. It was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess it was longer than that if you think about it. Yeah, because this was after Babylon AD, after we lost our record deal. I was kind of fumbling around looking for something to do. So this was about 96, 97, something like that.
Gotcha.
But, yeah, so Michael played a big part in that. He helped produce us, and, we did a lot of cool gigs, and like Zach Wilde would show up, and, just various people, James Lomenzo, I could off the top of my head,
So you guys had a lot of eyes on you, put it that way.
Yeah,
Jane Child. You formed Blackfoot, I think, from your first band going back, Fresh Garbage. Turn that into Blackfoot originally, right?
That was a hell of a name, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was an attention getter, right?
No, we just, it was a lot of people often ask me, how did you come to get that name, pick that name, Well, there was a band called Spirit,
right?
Back in the 60s, late 60s, and they had a song called Fresh Garbage on their album, and we just thought it was a cool name. As we said, hey, let's call the band that. I bet nowadays a good punk rock band would love to have that name.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, they would kill over that name. And you guys had some successful albums there with Blackfoot, and
oh yeah,
in the 70s and 80s. Strikes in 79, Tomcat in 80, and Marauder in 81. And then I was also reading, so you grew up with the members of Leonard Skinner, also, right?
Oh yeah, because we played back in the mid to late 60s. We played the same teen clubs, or the comic book club in Jacksonville, the Forest Inn, Good Shepherd, Woodstock Youth Center. I mean, the list goes on. And we played them, with our own prospective bands, but I was always around the guys. And as a matter of fact, Ronnie Van Zant, Johnny Van Zant and Donnie, their parents used to come to my dad's dances that he would have in and around Jacksonville.
The time has finally come for me to assume control. Do you think you could hide from me? Haha, just kidding. Join Rob Edwards and I for the new season of Talkin Bout Rock. We will be everywhere.